always said if I won Roland Garros, I wouldn't fall on the ground because I didn't want to get clay in my hair. But I think I was so relieved that the match was over because it was like 3 hours. I was so happy. So I just fell on the ground, and then it was more just disbelief, I think.
SHE just did it again. Coco Gauff stuns the world at Roland Garros, and nobody saw it coming. Let me tell you something right now. If you were sleeping on Coco Gauff, consider yourself fully woken up, because the young queen from Delray Beach, Florida, just walked into Paris, France, and absolutely set the entire tennis world on fire. At just 21 years old, Coco Gauff has done what very few athletes in the history of this sport have managed to pull off with such style, such grace, and such jaw-dropping nerve. She walked onto the clay courts of Roland Garros, stared down the most dominant player on the planet, dug herself out of a hole that would have buried most champions, and came out the other side, holding one of the most prestigious trophies in all of sport. Not once, not as a fluke, but as a statement. A bold, undeniable, era-defining statement that the tennis world had better buckle up because Coco Gauff is not here to participate. She is here to dominate.
Even coming into these tournaments, I mean, maybe my team has like a grand training plan that I don't know about to get me like physically and like, I guess mentally peaking at the slams, but some reason every time around this year I start to play better. So it's clearly working, yeah.
And if you think this story starts at Roland Garros, you are missing everything. Because the real story starts in the weeks before Paris, in the heartbreak of Rome, in the quiet practice sessions, in the tears that nobody talks about, but everybody needs to understand. This is not just a tennis story. This is a story about what happens when a young woman refuses to let the world write her narrative for her. So grab your popcorn, settle in, and let Chatterbox take you through every single moment of the most electrifying chapter in women's tennis right now. Because Coco Gauff just leveled up, and the whole world is watching. Let us start where every great comeback story begins, at the bottom. Well, not quite the bottom, because Coco Gauff has never truly been at the bottom. But if you were watching the clay court swing leading into Roland Garros 2025, you might have started to wonder. Madrid gave her trouble.
Nice drop shot from Noskova to start. Yeah, that's pretty.
Rome, the tournament that many had circled as a prime confidence booster heading into Paris, ended in what can only be described as pure heartbreak. Back-to-back losses on clay. Back-to-back moments where the scoreboard did not reflect the effort, the fight, or the talent that was pouring out of this young woman every single time she stepped on court.
Just stunning. Again, the athleticism, the desire.
And here is the thing about Coco Gauff that the casual tennis fan might not fully appreciate yet. She feels everything. Every loss, every missed opportunity, every moment where the match slips away, she carries it. You can see it in her face. You can see it in the way she sits in her chair during changeovers, processing, analyzing, refusing to switch off. She is not one of those players who puts on a blank face and pretends the pain does not exist. She lets you see it. And somehow, that vulnerability is one of the most powerful weapons she possesses.
As well, he's such a great champion, and hopefully to have more battles with you in the future.
After the Italian Open loss, Gauff opened up about her preparation heading into Roland Garros in a way that gave fans a real window into the mind of a champion who is still growing, still learning, and still finding new levels within herself. She talked about the work. She talked about coming back to the practice courts with even more focus, even more intention. She did not make excuses. She did not point fingers. She looked at what happened in Rome. She processed the heartbreak, and she used it as fuel. Because that is what champions do. That is what separates the players who win one slam from the players who build legacies.
First couple rounds were tough, but those are the matches you get through, and I was 1 point away from being out of the tournament, so really grateful to be in the final. And each match, I think I learned a little bit more from each match, and I think it's...
And here is the historical parallel that should have made every single Coco Gauff fan's jaw drop before a single ball was even struck at Roland Garros this year. Cast your mind back. Think about what happened in 2024, the year she won her first French Open title. What was the build-up? Tough losses, difficult clay swing, questions being asked in the press about her form, her consistency, her ability to perform when it mattered most on the red dirt. Sound familiar? Because that is almost exactly the template she followed in 2025.
Can be. I don't know. I feel like I had a good tournament in Rome, and similar to the preparation I had last year as this year, so I feel really ready, yeah.
Losses in Madrid and Rome, arriving at Roland Garros battle-tested, mentally forged in the fire of disappointment, and quietly, calmly, absolutely ready to remind everybody who she is. Rome was the rehearsal. Paris was the real stage. And Coco Gauff knew it before she ever set foot in the locker room at Stade Roland Garros. Now let us talk about the tournament itself, because this was not a case of Gauff cruising through the draw and avoiding the big guns until the final. This was a Coco Gauff who showed up mean. And we mean that in the most complimentary way possible. She arrived in Paris with an edge to her game, a sharpness in her ground strokes, and a serve that was landing like a guided missile in the corners. Match after match, she was sending messages, not just to her opponents, but to the entire women's tour. She was saying, without ever needing to open her mouth, I am here, I am ready, and I am not going. The early rounds were clinical. The later rounds were commanding. And then came the final. And oh boy, did this one deliver everything that tennis fans could have possibly dreamed of. On the other side of the net stood Aryna Sabalenka, world number 1. One of the most physically imposing, mentally ruthless, and tactically brilliant players the women's game has seen in years. A player who hits the ball so hard that opponents sometimes look genuinely startled by the pace coming off her strings. A player who had been playing some of the finest clay court tennis of her career heading into this final. A player who, by almost every analytical measure, entered that match as the favorite. And when Sabalenka took the opening set, those predictions seemed to be coming true. Because that first set was exactly what everyone feared for Coco. The power was immense. The shots were heavy. Sabalenka was dictating. Sabalenka was controlling the tempo. And for a moment, just a moment, you had to wonder whether this was going to be one of those finals that slips away before you can grab it back. Coco Gauff separates herself from the field. Here is the thing that you cannot coach, cannot manufacture, and cannot fake. When the match was at its most difficult, when the pressure was at its absolute maximum, when most 21-year-old 2 slam titles now, 2 French Open championships, and she is 21 years old. Let that sink in for a second. 21 years old and already a 2-time Grand Slam champion. 21 years old and already reshaping the conversation about who the greatest player of her generation will be. 21 years old and already carrying herself with the quiet authority of someone who has figured something out that most people spend their entire careers searching for. Because here is what the stats and the trophies and the ranking points do not capture about Coco Gauff. The thing that separates her, the thing that makes watching her so genuinely compelling, is the authenticity.
First, I want to congratulate Alina. Another tough battle between us.
This is a player who has never pretended to be something she is not. She cries when she loses. She smiles when she wins. She talks honestly in press conferences about doubt and belief and pressure and growth. She posts practice sessions on social media, not to perform for an audience, but because she genuinely loves the craft of tennis, loves the process of getting better, loves putting in the hours when nobody is watching so that she can be ready when everybody is watching. That clip from her Roland Garros practice session, grinding away on the red clay with the intensity dialed all the way up, that is not for show. That is who she is. That is the daily reality behind every championship point. And when you see the smile that breaks through during those sessions, when you see the joy that she still clearly takes from simply playing the sport, You understand that this is a player who has somehow managed to stay connected to what made her fall in love with tennis in the first place, even as the pressure and the expectations have grown to enormous proportions.
Very brutal at times and also favorable at times. So I think it's the uniqueness about our sport is literally not over until it's over. If there's anything I would change.
Now, let us talk about the bigger picture, because Coco Gauff's story does not exist in isolation. It exists within the context of a women's game that is going through one of the most exciting and unpredictable periods in its history. For years, the narrative was dominated by questions about who would rise to fill the enormous legacy left by the Williams sisters. Who would carry the torch for American tennis? Who would become the face of the sport for a new generations? The answer, it turns out, was already on tour, already grinding, already developing, already preparing herself, loss by loss and win by win, to become exactly what the sport needed. And what makes Gauff's story even more resonant is the way she has handled the expectation that has been placed on her since she was barely a teenager. Most athletes crumble under that kind of weight. Most people, frankly, would crumble under that kind of weight. To be told from the age of 15 that you are the next great American tennis player, to have cameras following your every match, to have every loss dissected and every win scrutinized, that is not a normal experience for a young person to navigate. But Gauff has navigated it with a maturity that consistently leaves people shaking their heads in admiration.
Your first year on tour is a bit the easiest in a way, in a sense, if you're like a great talent, just because there's no points, no pressure. Every tournament's a new experience. And then, people start talking, and then maybe making a quarterfinal.
Her team deserves enormous credit for that. The people around her, the coaching staff who have built her game with care and intelligence, the family who have clearly given her a foundation of values and perspective that no ranking can shake. They have all played a role in creating the environment in which Coco Gauff could grow into the player and the person she is becoming. But ultimately, this is about Coco. This is about the work she has chosen to put in, the mentality she has chosen to cultivate, and the kind of champion she has chosen to be. And she has chosen to be the kind of champion who shows up to the practice court after losing in Rome, who shows up to Roland Garros without fear even after the results suggested she might have reason to be fearful. Who shows up in the third set of a Grand Slam final with the world watching and finds another gear that most people did not know she had. The journey from New York to Paris, from the U.S. Open title that announced her arrival as a genuine Grand Slam champion, to this second French Open crown that cements her status as a defining figure in the sport. It has not been a straight line. It has had twists and turns and losses and setbacks and moments where the narrative could have gone in a very different direction. But Coco Gauff has been the author of her own story every step of the way, and right now, the story she is writing is one for the ages. Think about where women's tennis goes from here. Think about the rivalries that are developing, the storylines that are building, the generational talent that is currently competing on the biggest stages in the sport. Sabalenka is not going anywhere. She is a ferocious competitor who will be back, hungrier than ever, looking to reclaim what she considers hers. Iga Swiatek, despite her own challenges this year, remains one of the most accomplished players of this era and is always a threat on any surface. There are young players emerging from every corner of the globe who are developing their games with one eye on the top of the rankings. The competition is as fierce as it has ever been. And yet, right now, in this moment, Coco Gauff stands above all of them as the French Open champion. She stands above all of them as the player who just went to the most storied clay court venue in the world, took on the best player on the planet, and won. She was not chasing greatness anymore. She was becoming it. She is becoming it. One match, one tournament, one breathtaking comeback at a time. There is something else worth saying here, something that gets lost sometimes in the numbers and the rankings and the tactical breakdowns. Coco Gauff is genuinely, authentically likable, not in the manufactured, media-trained, carefully curated way that some athletes present themselves. Genuinely, organically likable. The way she carries herself with her opponents. The sportsmanship that defines her even in the moments when competition is at its most intense. The way she talks about the sport, about her life, about the things that matter to her beyond tennis. It all adds up to a portrait of a young woman who is exactly who she appears to be. And in a world where authenticity can feel increasingly rare, that matters. It matters to fans. It matters to the young players who are watching her and seeing a template for how to carry yourself at the highest level. The tears after losses, the smile during practice, the intensity when it counts, and the lightness that reminds you this is still someone who truly loves what they do. That is the full picture of Coco Gauff. And it is a picture worth paying very close attention to, because we are still in what feels like the early chapters of a story that could run for a very, very long time. Because here is the terrifying thing for the rest of the women's tour. Here is the thing that should be keeping opponents awake at night. Coco Gauff is 21 years old. She has won 2 Grand Slam titles. She is still growing, still improving, still finding new levels in her game and her mind. The player who just won Roland Garros 2025 is better than the player who won Roland Garros 2024 and the player who wins Roland Garros in 2026 or 2027. If current trajectories continue and tennis gods cooperate, will likely be better still. The ceiling for this young woman is somewhere up in the clouds, and she has not come close to hitting it yet. That is what makes this moment so electric. That is what makes sitting down and watching Coco Gauff play tennis in 2025 feel like a genuine privilege. You are watching greatness in the process of being constructed, brick by brick, title by title, lesson by lesson. You are watching someone figure out, in real time, just how good they can be. And the answer, so far, keeps coming back bigger than the question. From Delray Beach to the world. From teenage prodigy to 2-time Grand Slam champion. From the girl who made the world cry watching her lose at Wimbledon years ago to the young woman who made the world erupt watching her win in Paris. Coco Gauff has been on one of the most remarkable journeys in modern sport. And if you have been watching, if you have been paying attention, then you know that the best is absolutely, undeniably, thrillingly yet to come. She is red clay of Roland Garros, in front of the whole world, with nothing held back and everything on the line. So what do you think? Is Coco Gauff the most exciting young athlete in sport right now? And we will see you in the next one.
People like see me, and this is just crazy, and I really appreciate you guys. Like, every congratulations, every we love you, every we support you, every I was rooting for you, like, really means a lot to me.